12:15.
12:15, so 1 hour and 15 minutes.
So are we only, before you start, we still have 2 minutes. Can I do some announcements? Yeah, 1 minute. Quick announcement.
Bistra.
Yeah, Bistra. Not a Bistra.
Go.
It's your time.
Wala pa yung boat.
Wala pa yung boat. 50 pesos only.
Очень хорошо. Спасибо большое, Christy.
Nie za что. Ako lang na, ayan na.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое.
Despacito.
Placebo. Yeah. Okay, folks, let's go.
Yes.
Page 9 in the books, please. One of our friends, one of our mutual friends in Kyrgyzstan, Sergei Koblov. He said in the Soviet Union, where he was educated, they have this saying, which is that repetition is the mother of learning. Okay? Repetition is the mother of learning. So the more
Memorization form of education.
yeah. So you learn things not by intuition, but just by repetition and memorizing. So this is a little bit of memorization, looking at page 9. Что? Okay. Okay. You may recall this diagram. This diagram is always worthwhile looking back. When I die, this can go on my grave as maybe the most useful thing that I ever thought of.
Patented.
Что?
Patented. Patented. The diagram.
Patented.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should do. Yeah.
In the PowerPoint for module 2,
You could have.
each one.
Yeah, great. So we went over this last night. Did we or not? Yeah. Okay. So what's so useful about this diagram is the thing which is most useful is the bottom. Yep. Do you need me to just quickly talk you through this diagram?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just quickly talk you through it. So at the very top, this circle here. Oh no. Let's go for the light blue in the background.
We only have black and white.
Oh, you only have black and white. Okay. So you can't. You can
So
see.
you have it in the
Yeah. Yeah. And also, it's on page 9. Page 9. So in the background, you'll see there is a very, very faint grey in your books. Large oblong. Okay? And there are notes which go along with this on the previous page. That large oblong refers to the bottom paragraph, which is God's perspective on biblical worldview, which is you could say that actually God's biblical worldview is defined by 3 moments. Okay? I call these the 3 singularities. Are there any physicists here? No physicists? Does anyone know what a singularity is? Say again?
Individuality.
Big Bang.
It is in a way, but it's, sorry?
Big Bang.
Big Bang. So in physics, a singularity is a moment when everything is one. Okay? So people talk about the edge of a black hole. is a singularity, where at a brief moment everything is united before it becomes nothing. And we talk also in terms of any Big Bang theory. At the moment of creation, when the voice speaks into nothing and says, "Let there be," at the moment of creation, matter and antimatter are created in equal amounts, and everything, just for the tiniest moment, all that is unified. And then it moves apart and becomes the cosmos. Okay? And if the cosmos ever collapses, in the last fraction of a second before it collapses, there will be what's called a singularity, where everything will be one, and then it will become nothing. Theologically, this is a really interesting idea. Theologically, there are 3 moments in time through which all cosmic history can be understood. Okay? And the first of those is creation. So Paul tells us that by Jesus and through Jesus and for Jesus, okay, all things were created. Yeah? So there is a moment at which everything that comes into existence through Jesus Christ. A creation moment. You can get that from Colossians chapter 1. Yeah? Jesus, the image of the invisible God. So Colossians chapter 1, 15 onwards. Paul also tells us in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 10, that God is bringing everything together under Christ. And that is the end point, in a way, of this biblical worldview on creation. So there is a start point by him and with him and through, by him, through him, for him, all things created. There is an end point, everything together under Christ. And of course that end point is a new beginning. And then there is a midpoint, which is the cross. And the cross and the death of Jesus and his resurrection is the point at which the new beginning is initiated. Yeah? So I like to think of those as being 3 theological singularities. Because without those 3 moments in time, we can't understand the gospel from God's perspective. But with those 3 moments of cosmic history taking place in the person of Jesus Christ, actually everything makes sense. So I've used the word singularity there. It's not a theological word, it's a physics word. But I think it makes sense because there is nothing in the cosmos which escapes those 3 moments in time. All things created by Christ, through him, for him. All things together under Christ. And the moment through which that is possible is the cross. Yep? So use the word with caution. If you bump into a physicist, don't start talking about singularities. They'll tear you to pieces. But in our heads, it's a useful concept.
3 moments.
See?
3 moments.
3 moments. 3 moments of I mean, singularity is the right word because it's like they're like eyes in a needle through which everything passes. And so the whole of our understanding of everything to do with creation passes through these 3 moments. So cool. So that's the big picture that's going on in the background. And in Augustinian theology, we talk about creation, fall, redemption, and new creation. Yeah? That's the same. It's exactly the same story, but I've just used slightly different words to talk about it. Yeah? Then here, this top circle here, the darker one in your workbooks, is what we call the anthropocentric worldview in Eden. So this is from a human perspective. So the big picture is from God's perspective. And this one here, all these three circles, they're seeing the world from a human perspective, as we're informed from Scripture. So none of us were in Eden, but all of us will be in the New Jerusalem. But the account that we have from Eden was specific, as an account of Adam and Eve in Eden, and from that we can take certain things which we've looked at a lot in Module 2. So the way that we're created for a relationship of trust and dependency on God. The way that we're created to take responsibility for creation and for those within creation. Yeah? So we're created to love, to trust, to depend, to collaborate, to interdepend, and then to take responsibility for God's creation. The next circle down, the lighter grey, is, again, it's from a human perspective, but it's in the world after Eden. When sin breaks God's creation, Genesis chapter 3, and the relationships for which we are created become reversed. So rather than my self-experience being constantly through what I'm able to do for the benefit and blessing of others, my self-experience becomes constantly through what I get others to do for me. So rather than worshipping God selflessly, humans create gods who they can control. Fake gods, but they believe them to be gods. Rather than loving people with a boundless and endless love, we instead value people according to what they give us. Yeah? So, we're told if we're in a toxic relationship, the best thing is to get out of it. And that may be true, because we are limited in our capacity to deal with things. But it doesn't mean that we should stop praying for the person who's forced us into a toxic relationship. If we're in a workplace, we go through our LinkedIn connections. How useful are our LinkedIn? I've got to say, I'm the most useless LinkedIn connection. I never give anything to anyone because I don't have time. I've probably been cut off by thousands of people over the years on a transactional basis. How do we value people? Do we value them for who they are or for who we want them to be? Yeah? And creation. Are we going through life as constant consumers? To some extent we are. We do have to consume. It's a part of existence. But does our consumption lead to exploitation? Or is our consumption mindful and careful? So in my nation, recycling is a big thing. In Germany, it's a bigger thing, and has been for decades. When you put your trash out, if your trash goes into the recycling, you don't pay for it to be collected. But if your trash doesn't go into recycling, you have to pay. So it's a good incentive. All plastic bottles or glass bottles you buy from the supermarket, you can take back to the supermarket, you feed into the machine, and you get a credit note, which you take into the supermarket and spend on more plastic bottles. Yeah? But it's a real way of incentivizing people. If we don't have those incentives, what do we do ourselves? What is our attitude? What am I? It's very wet. I've never been here in the rain before. I didn't bring a raincoat. You don't have raincoats? No. Do you have waterproof skin? Hey, look, this is a really, really great time for this, okay? Water. This is the mind-blowing thing. Water doesn't make sense. If you look at the universe, one of the unique things about this planet is water. And yet no one can explain where the water came from. Scientists cannot explain water on Earth. They say perhaps from passing meteorites. That's the best bet. The amount of water on this planet is fixed. There is no process in creation that creates new water. Locally, there may be a spring, there may be a cloud. But within the environment, it's just going round and round and round. Isn't that an extraordinary thing? And look at you. I look at you, I see skin, I see eyes, I see hair. I also see 80% of you is water. Crazy! Go in the rain and you might grow. Isn't that an interesting thing? And at the moment we are filling our water with microplastics that our environment cannot get rid of. Which means that in 50 years' time, children will be born with microplastics in them. That's a crazy thing. This isn't a lecture on the environment, but we should be approaching all of life with responsibility. That's what we're created for. Yeah? And too quickly, in our inverted world, we become consumers and exploiters. Yeah? Now God has given us the planet to use, but not to exploit. Okay, my third diagram down here with the two circles. The outer circle is this world influenced and shaped by sin, and the inner circle is who we are in Christ. And in Christ, the Spirit of God puts in our hearts a desire to see these original relationships restored. So in Christ, we want to worship God for who He is. Not for some little God that we've made and put on a shelf over there, but for being the creator of the cosmos. Yeah? I'm not saying that these are gods, but you know what I mean. A little statue. In Christ, we want to see the relationships that we have function in a way that we're intended to live. So no longer viewing people for what we can get from them, but viewing people for what we can give to them. Yeah? It's a different mentality. And as I just said, thinking about creation, not just in terms of my immediate part of it, and whether I have a nice place to sit in the sun, but recognizing that actually, it's a closed system on planet Earth. Even if Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, I'd be happy if he went to Mars, personally, and stayed there. But it's a closed system. And the decisions that we make in a more developed nation have an impact on people living in a less developed nation. And where Christianity is historically associated with some of the wealthiest countries on earth, if people from less wealthy countries perceive that the Christian nations are exploiting, and that has a detrimental effect on them, then they have reason to question the life-changing nature of Christianity. You understand that? All of this stuff is interconnected. And it's not that we ever lose sight of proclaiming Christ and wanting people to come and bow their knee before Christ. But if we proclaim Christ and at the same time we rape the earth, then people can justifiably point the finger at us and say that we're hypocrites. Yeah? Now, this same principle is at the heart of what we're looking at this weekend, which is integrity. Yeah? Integrity. Trustworthiness. Honesty. doing that which is right, even when nobody cares that we do what is right, when no one notices. Because the opposite of integrity is dishonesty or corruption. And sadly, around this planet, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of church-attending followers of Jesus are routinely involved in corruption. And that is a sin. And in most cases, it's a sin that could be avoided. In most cases. And the problem is that if the non-believing world looks at Christians and sees Christians as people who are corrupt, then they have good reason to question the significance of the God that we claim to worship. Do you understand that? So I was talking about this in Mexico, and Mexico has a reputation. Drugs, guns, crime, corruption. I'm talking to this young woman who's on staff with InterVarsity, part-time, teaching part-time. We were talking about corrupt people that they know. She said, the most corrupt person I know is the head teacher of the school where I work. And then she said, and he's also my pastor. Now I would say, why go to that church if that's the case? Why bother going? But it's not a unique scenario to find people with a big public reputation as Christians who are known for their corruption. And we see it. Every few years there's another scandal. Another great Christian leader who's taking money on the side, or who's visiting prostitutes in their spare time, or whatever. Abusing the system for their own advantage. And the journey towards corruption starts with one small step at a time. And what we need to do is we need to learn how to spot those one small steps and create an alternative for our people to follow. Yeah? So there's another sermon for you. 3 C's. Regarding corruption, Christians are either complicit, which means they're taking the backhanders, or they're paying. They're complicit, or they are compromised because they think, I did something bad in the past and someone will point the finger at me, or they're complacent. In my country, Christians are complacent about corruption. They think it's not my problem, it doesn't happen here. But Mr. Putin knows very well that most of his money has been laundered through British banks. So there's something going on. And Christians say it's not our problem. Nothing going on. Nothing to see. Mr. Policeman, nothing to see. But there is. And I think those 3 C's, complicit,
Compromise.
compromised, or complacent. Yeah? And we need to weigh those up. You see, corruption is a real problem with gospel consequences. Okay? It does have gospel consequences. Because corruption always brings about injustice. And it may not be injustice for me. It may be that I'm wealthy enough that I can afford to pay the little bribe that's being demanded from me by a police officer, or by a hospital surgeon, or by the tax office. But down the street there's somebody who can't afford to pay that, who is not allowed access to healthcare, who's not allowed to graduate from their degree program because they're unwilling or unable to pay the cost that's expected. And again, if people look at us as Christians and say, you are blind to this problem, and this problem has societal consequences for the rest of us, then why would those people choose to believe in the God that we claim is good, and is just, and is fair, and is loving? So what I hope is that as Christians, we find ourselves down here. We find ourselves at war with the world. I mean, not with weapons and tanks and swords, but in our hearts. We find ourselves dissatisfied with dominant culture, which is deeply contrary to the values of Christ's kingdom. We should be at war, and we should be praying, Lord, show me how, in my sphere of influence, show me how I do something differently. Going back to our living signposts, this is what it means to live such good lives among non-believers that they see our good works and glorify God. So I could tell you countless stories. I could tell you about Christy Kola. Christy Kola is the only Albanian Christian trained as a psychiatrist in his country. And the standard thing for people in medicine in Albania is you're paid a low salary, because it used to be a communist state, and you supplement your salary by getting payments under the table from customers. And he knows that that means that there are customers who can't afford healthcare. So Christy Kola, instead of volunteering for his local InterVarsity group, decided to take on 2 full-time jobs as a doctor. Okay? So instead of taking payments under the table, he's working twice as hard in order to be an honest person, practicing psychiatry as a follower of Jesus Christ in his country. I think that's incredibly cool. Even though he's had to drop out of church activity and drop out of InterVarsity activity, I think it's very cool that he's decided to live as a person of complete integrity in a very valuable and trusted position in society. I'm sure we can think of other examples of people who have determined that they will live differently because of the impact of Christ on their lives. This is our start point, and this is why we're looking at this topic: honesty, integrity, and the flip side, corruption, this weekend. Okay. So if you turn on in your books onto let's go to page 12, and again a very brief reminder. We spoke about this yesterday in the review, the anatomy of sin, but in the good Soviet education style, I'm going to repeat it. Does anyone remember the anatomy of sin we looked at in Genesis chapter 3? Anyone recall this? Should I give you some help? I'll help as long as you promise to stay awake. Okay? If I'm talking all the time, you might fall asleep. So I don't want that. Okay.
No.
So maybe someone can read for us Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 to 8.
I'll go ahead.
She's got there first.
Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God has made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden'?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, But God said, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden.
Great. Okay. So, just to give you a brief recap on this, in module 2, we looked at the name change of God. Okay. So, how in Genesis chapter 1, God is Elohim 30 times. And then in Genesis chapter 2, from verse 4 onwards, that changes to Yahweh Elohim. Okay, and Yahweh Elohim literally translates as Yahweh your God. So it's God revealing himself with a name, which is where we get this idea of personhood. God is a person, not a mysterious force. And being a person means that he is knowable and is relational. Okay? So important that we understand that. And what you might have noticed, when Lily read the text right now, the reason why we go up to verse 8 is because the text starts with the serpent talking to the woman about Elohim. But then when we read verse 8, we read Yahweh Elohim was walking in the garden. You see that? So this isn't a mistake, this is storytelling. You know, it's got a sort of, you know, here we are, we're reading creation, chapter 1, Elohim, 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 Elohim. Turn the page, chapter 2. Ah, this is who this God is. This God is Yahweh Elohim. And this God is knowable. And then we turn the page, and it's chapter 3, and in comes this serpent who has depersonalized God. Just back to Elohim. Did Elohim say this? Did Elohim say that? It's a bit like, you know, if Don and I were sitting in the same room here, and we're talking about the woman over there. The woman. You see the woman who's writing a message on her phone. Donna, can you see the woman? Yeah, the woman writing a message on her phone. And you say yes, the woman. And we talk about the woman. And we know the woman.
Yes.
She's got a name. Christy Chitani. But instead of talking about, did you see what Christy was doing just now? Writing a message on her phone. You know, we say the woman. That's what this
That
conversation.
woman.
Pictures about cross-current.
That woman.
Yeah,
That woman.
That woman, I know. But you understand the point.
Yes.
So in my anatomy of sin, point number 1 is God is depersonalized. There's an irony here. This is the first theological conversation that's recorded. Theology is when we talk about God instead of talking to him. It's interesting, isn't it? It's a story, it's a conversation about God. Did God really say? Did God really? And within that, point number 2, within that, the serpent is questioning whether God can be trusted. did God really say that you can't touch this, you can't eat the fruit from these trees? No, God didn't say that. He said it's just this one tree. We can't even touch it. Now, that's religion. The woman has created religion, which is a rule on top of God's instruction. We can't even touch it. Which God never said. He just said don't eat the fruit. But God's trustworthiness is challenged. In verse 4, the serpent says, oh, you won't really die. I mean, the one thing that Eve and Adam have been told is if you eat the fruit of the tree, you will surely die. That's the one thing they know. And along comes the serpent and says, the one thing God has told you so far is not true. You can't trust him. That's the undercurrent. Okay, so point number 1, God is depersonalized. Point number 2, his trustworthiness is challenged. Point number 3, the serpent goes on and says, you know what will happen? If you take this fruit and eat it, you'll become just like God in knowing good and evil. Yeah? So the offer is of equality. And equality is the basis for independence. Yeah? If you're equal, I got this from talking to some sixth form kids in school. And I said, if you become just like your head teacher, do you still need a head teacher? And of course the answer is no. If I'm equal to my head teacher, I'm independent. If you're equal with God, you are independent. And that's not how we're created to be. And then number 4 is the act of disobedience. And at the very moment where Eve reaches out and takes this fruit, she completely disregards the relationship with God, risking everything. I don't care if that relationship's broken, I'm still going to do this. She completely disregards the relationship with Adam, because at that point he may or may not choose to follow her. She doesn't care. She chooses to go this way in disobedience with disregard for any other relationships. Okay? And I just find it very, very useful to understand this first sin in those 4 different levels. You can actually add more. You can make it up to 8 different steps in this first sin. But I think there's 4. Depersonalize God. Doubt whether God is trustworthy and good. Crave independence from Him. And disregard all other relationships. Leading to the act of disobedience. And the reason why I think those things are really important, because we're constantly involved in culture wars. We heard about that with your colleagues, and the queer theology thing. We're constantly involved in culture wars, and the law of God in the Bible is something which we as Christians, as Bible people, want to pay close attention to. But it doesn't necessarily stand up as a first thing to point non-believers to. Yeah? So we can't say necessarily, the problem is this, that we live in a world which increasingly does not believe in sin. It does believe that there are bad people and bad people do bad things. But it doesn't believe in any sort of concrete concept of sin. And if we reference sin, or if we speak about sin only in reference to the law, and people say, well, that's from your old book and it has no contemporary relevance and no significance now, then we find ourselves having a culture war which relates to documents which are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years old. And that's tricky. And so I think it's really important for us to understand sin not only as the disobedience, but as this wider framework of disregarding God, of breaking trust with Him, of craving independence, and of valuing self-interest above the interests of others. For me, I found that it's much more useful to talk in those categories than to talk in categories of right and wrong according to the Hebrew law. And it's not that I'm saying that the right and wrong according to the Hebrew law is irrelevant. It's very relevant. But it's not the starting point for our conversations. I think that's right. If anyone wants to come back on that, please do. If anyone wants to question on that, please do. But for me, I find the we'll look at Leviticus 19 later on this weekend. And in the Levitical law, there are lots of statements. This is good, this is good, this is bad, this is bad, this is good, this is good, this is bad, this is bad. We, as people who have surrendered our lives to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, need to listen to the voice of Scripture. But it doesn't mean that we can necessarily walk into the streets of our cities and hold up those pages of Scripture and say to the world, submit to these rules. I think our culture war happens at a different level. And we have to say to people, if there is a possibility of God, what would sin look like? And this anatomy of sin for me is a helpful place for starting that conversation. Does that make sense? Yeah? The diagram below that we've spoken about already in my little recap of the world and stuff. If you flick over the page, I've written Trouble with Trust. Now this is really, really, really interesting. Okay? There was a survey that I found such a long time ago that I didn't make good note of it. Okay? But it was really interesting. The findings of the survey: 2,000 United States CEOs were interviewed, and they were asked, what is the most important quality you look for in your in your senior staff appointments? Okay? Most important quality. And out of the 2,000, 84% said integrity. Okay? Then they were asked in the same interview, can you define integrity? And 87% said no. Okay? So the most important thing they look for in senior appointments is integrity, but they don't know how to define integrity. Okay? Trust, the quote here, trust is like the air we breathe. When it's present, nobody really notices. When it's absent, everybody notices. That's a good quote, isn't it? That's Warren Buffett, who some of you will know is the most famous investor ever to have lived. He's made billions and billions of dollars through his investments in the stock exchange. And he says that trust is essential, like the air we breathe. And you only notice when you haven't got it. There's a very interesting thing, and again, make a note of this, but the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I've referenced here, this is really, really fascinating. You can look it up online. Every year, since the year 2000, this American marketing organization has created what they call a trust barometer. It's a global survey. 15,000 people surveyed about, maybe it's 30,000, but yeah, 30,000. 33,000, I think, yeah. Interviewed from 28 different countries, and they're asked a series of questions, and from the answers that are given, this analysis looks at how much people trust business, governments, media, and NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And repeatedly, the most trusted one of those four his business. But when you look into it, it's really fascinating. If you read it, you'll find loads of stuff in there
The
too.
most trusted.
Most trusted is business. Yeah, because greed is something everybody understands, and it's open. Whereas politicians are always doing things, in a quiet corner. And media, no one knows whether they can trust or not. And NGOs, well, again and again and again, our institutions, Christian or other NGO institutions, find themselves held under suspicion. The Trust Barometer is worth looking at. It's a good read. The next one is coming out at the end of January. That'll be for 2025. The one for 2024, you can look at it online. They have downloadable versions. They have presentations. If you want to talk about this with people, it's got a lot of very engaging material. They even have now some country-by-country reports. They don't have the Philippines. They've got Indonesia. That's not very far away. They've got China. They've got Japan. There's interesting stuff there. It's a topic that fascinates you. It's really worthwhile looking at. What I find particularly fascinating is that this company has decided to make trust into their dominant theme since the year 2000. This is a thing that the world is interested in, and the world doesn't know how to find it. And these guys, they've built their reputation as a global marketing organisation by producing this one annual report. It's fascinating. None of it's good news. None of it's good news. So trust is something which is in limited supply. We know this, don't we? I mean, we look across the far side of the Pacific Ocean, and we see a nation. I was reading an article in the middle of the night about the funeral of Jimmy Carter. And at this funeral, in the front rows, there was former President Donald Trump, there was former President Barack Obama, there was former Vice President Mike Pence, there was former President George W. Bush, there was former President Bill Clinton. All these people, they're sitting in two rows together. And Melania Trump did not say hello to a single person. She sat there reading the program while people walked past her. Bill and Hillary Clinton, instead of going down the line they were meant to be seated in, because Donald was sitting at one end of it, they went right the way around the building to come back in over this side, so they could avoid. You look at this thing, and there is a nation absolutely defined by broken trust. You've got Mike Pence, who was Donald Trump's vice president for 4 years, sitting right behind him. And Donald Trump does get up and shake hands with him, but Melania refuses to speak to him because Mike Pence decided not to follow Donald Trump's suggestion that the previous election was rigged and that Trump had in fact won it. Because Mike Pence wanted to be a person of integrity. But, there is just one example. I'm sure there are examples closer to home. I'm sure, in politics in the Philippines.
Yes. President and vice president.
Tell me.
Well, they used to be buddies.
Unity. Unity.
Yeah, unity.
Unity.
Unity. Okay.
Divisional. Now,
Unity is their motto.
Okay.
Now they're quarreling together.
Okay.
now the vice president said live on TV that she is planning to have the
President assassinated.
Oh, nice.
On
What's the reaction?
Oh, this is the president who was the son of the former president.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Daughter,
she said,
the daughter.
if she dies, people should run after the president.
because he's the
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is the daughter of the former president, Duterte.
Yeah.
Of course, later on, she said, I was just joking.
Yeah. Okay, so you understand the point.
Yes.
Okay, now
Very much
bring that point back to a more personal level. Okay, what sort of people do you want to work for? What sort of people do you want to work for? Do you want to work for people who are transparent and open and honest and trustworthy?
Yes.
Okay. And will you, therefore, be transparent and honest and open and trustworthy yourself?
Yes.
Yeah? I mean, that's what we're called to. Okay? If we want to believe in a better society, then actually the route to the better society starts with us. And if we are followers of Jesus Christ and we're proclaiming Christ is Lord of all, then we need to know what that lordship looks like in terms of our own calibration of honesty in our lives. Okay? So there's a whole lot, it's complex here. It's about authenticity. It's about living lives that might be hugely detrimental to us, but which might cause others to start asking questions about the authenticity of the gospel. Yeah? So where we're going to go the rest of this weekend is we're going to go onto thin ice. Actually, if we take this step, it's a step of risk. And we've got to know that we're doing it with the right attitude. So I'm going to take you back quickly to 1 Peter before we go anywhere else. And 1 Peter chapter 2, we spoke about these verses about restoration from chapter 2 verses 24, 25. But immediately before that, verse 23, chapter 2 verse 23. Talking about Jesus, who says, when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Okay? When we're talking about roots, we're talking about foundations in our lives. The only example we can follow is that of Jesus Christ, who at any point during his persecution, his trial, his murder, could have called on the comforters of heaven to rescue him, and didn't. But instead chose to entrust himself to the one who judges justly. Okay, if we're going to be living in a corrupted world as people who are not corrupted, we've got to know that the one in whose name we claim to be living is completely trustworthy. Yeah? I sometimes sit down with a notebook and I try to write in words a sketch of who God is. You know, what are the things I know about God? And what I've come up with so far is that God is the source of all life. Okay? That's true, isn't it? And God is the source of all goodness. Yeah? He is in every aspect of his nature good. And not just good in a sort of nice, kind way, but good in a very fundamental moral way. The law is an inadequate reflection of God's goodness. Yeah? Without God, there is only a brutal, mechanical, Darwinian universe in which the person with the biggest gun wins. And with God, there is real, absolute goodness, and we can have confidence in Him. We need to know that. Okay, turn please to page 15, and we're going to play a game. Look at this, I love this. I invented this one night, and I've never taken drugs. And I still managed to invent this funny game. Look at that. So page 15, and then if you look over the page onto page 16 and 17, you'll see a little diagram. Okay. So the idea of this diagram is, have you got it? Yep.
Yeah.
Page 16, 17.
Yeah.
Diagram with all the little funny eggs. The idea of this diagram is you make choices. Okay? Every choice you make leads to the next choice you make. And there's no going back. Okay? So, the first question is, do I do this or do I do that? And you have two choices. And then you follow from choice to choice to choice until you get to the bottom, and you've got, at the bottom, 16 possible outcomes. Okay? Now, hang on, don't look at it yet, because we're going to read the scenario, and then I'm going to ask you in 3 minutes to tick all your choices that you make going down this game, okay? All right, now I say 3 minutes because in real life, decisions about integrity happen quickly. The boss says, do this. And you're thinking, well, Jesus says no, but I could lose my job. You know, that's what happens. Okay, so on page 15 is the scenario. Maybe someone could read that out for us, and if there's anything which is unclear, you just question me, and we'll make sure we have complete clarity on the scenario, and then we'll flip over the page, and I'll ask you to make your choices. Is that okay? Prince, brother, would you like to read it out for us? On page 15, if you could read the scenario. And again, as I say, if anything is unclear in this story, please question me so that we all know where we're starting. Thank you.
Scenario. You work for a wholesaler who buys goods from abroad and sells them to retail clients who sell the goods in their shops. Your company has a deadline to deliver goods to a retail client. You want the goods urgently for a product launch this week, but the goods need to be imported and go through customs first. The customs house takes about 1.5 hours to get to and from the office because of traffic, but you live quite close to it. When leaving work in the evening, your colleague Anna asked if you would be able to help by going to the customs house to collect that delivery on your way into work the next day. She says she'll be in touch to confirm whether the goods have arrived at the customs house. When you arrive at work the next day, Anna rushes up to you. Did you get the delivery? Where is it? You said that you hadn't heard from her, so you didn't go to the customs house. She grabs your phone and shows you her WhatsApp message from late last night. You reply saying, I thought you were going to call me, not send me a message I might not see. I thought about calling, Anna replied, but it was already after midnight, so I just sent the message. Oh, mother, says Anna.
Or words to that effect.
We're in real trouble now. She spotted your boss rushing over phone in hand, speaking to the client. Yes, no problem. We'll get it to you today.
Thanks.
We've already picked it up from customs.
Okay, so here are the rules, okay? The rules are written down here. You are I. Okay? You are the person making choices. You've got 5 minutes to complete the game. Put a circle around your first answer in each choice. You always have to choose A or B. Okay? And you cannot go backwards. And you will end up with one outcome. Numbers 1 through 16. And there are probably no right answers. Okay?
So on page 16 is A, and page 17 is B.
Only in the first scenario. So what you've got is you've got A's on both pages and B's on both pages, but the first choice is divided across the 2 pages. Once you've made that first choice, you have to follow it through. So if you choose A, then all your answers will be on page 16. If you choose B, all your answers will be on page 17.
Okay.
Okay? So you have to make that first choice. So, is that okay?
Okay.
Everything clear?
Yeah.
No?
Yes. You start first and
You,
Oh,
Yeah,
this is
that's
A,
what
this is B.
if you read A and B, read
Ah,
those
you
two,
read it.
and then you decide which one you're going to do. And then you just put a circle around either A or B or whatever, and say, this is my choice. Then go to the next choice. Okay? Is that clear?
yes.
Okay, so the timer is starting now. We've got 5 minutes. How many people? Anybody? Nobody got answer 1? Anyone get answer 2? No? On the very last row? Answer 3? Answer 4? Pay an official? Speed up the process? Answer 5? Take responsibility? Hope that my integrity will show? Answer 6? Argue with the boss that it was all Anna's fault, not mine? Sorry? Are you following me? Are we all on the same page?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Answer 7. Call my friend who's a director of the company I work for and say, I'm in trouble, I need help. That's where I got it. That was my answer this time. Answer 8. Try and get myself a new job very quickly. That's where you are. No? Okay. Answer 9. Remind Anna that it was all her fault and I'm trying to help her. Yes. Okay. Number 10. Phone the boss and say that it was all Anna's fault, not mine. Okay. Thanks, friends. Number 11. Tell my boss that we could lose the client and suggest that he takes over.
11.
Yeah? Okay. Number 12. Tell the client it was their fault for placing the order too late. I think I should say, and lose the client. Number 13. Tell the boss I never lie, and he says I have no place in business. That's Christy and Don Don.
This actually
13 and
happened to
14.
me.
There are 2.
Yep.
Choose one.
So number 14. Tell the boss I never lie, and the boss says well done.
It's the same action from me, but it depends on what the boss will
Oh, yeah,
do.
yeah, okay,
so
okay,
it's
okay.
not,
Okay, yeah.
it's a choice. It's not really.
Well, it
it's the
depends
same
on
choice.
what your experience is and how you expect your boss to behave. Number 15, decide I can do nothing, so I go to the pub. If I get it straight away to the pub. And number 16, call a corrupt import company to see if they can help. Anybody? How many people have not told me their answers? Come on.
That was the outcome for mine when I choose to
What, number
do
16?
something. Yeah, do something about it.
At least a solution then.
It was not a solution.
Okay, Sherman, what answer did you get?
I'm not that finished.
Number which? Which were you liking?
Number 2.
Number 3.
Ang weird mag-broadcast. You wanted to do the right thing. So,
Sorry,
tell
which
the
one?
client, it's okay, I'm gonna check
Ask
about
the
it.
boss
Don't
what
worry.
he wants me
The
to do
output or
after
outcomes
telling
I
me
want
the
to share.
story.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So
Number
fix
2.
your
Yeah.
ask for €2,000.
Negative
That's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
3 months.
Yeah.
He has good connection with boss. And can give you solution.
Okay, folks. Yeah. Which one did you?
Or take
I chose number 7.
Number 7. Oh, same as me. Yeah. Phone a friend.
Call for help.
Yeah. Call for help.
Someone bigger.
Yeah. Now look, okay, it's just a game.
But it's about outcome.
It's about outcome. Yeah. And this is how we often have to make decisions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one small step determines the next step. Yep. And then the next step, and then the next step. And suddenly we might find ourselves in the pub and phoning a friend and looking for a new job. Or we might find ourselves feeling a lot of pressure either to be dishonest or to drop our colleague in trouble.
I should have dropped her.
Because it really wasn't my fault. I'm only trying to help out. You know, and it's somebody else who's made the scenario. You know? Really, Anna should be stepping up and taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Turn it around. You are Anna. If you are Anna, what do you do in this situation?
Tell the boss.
Step up.
Step up,
And take responsibility.
take responsibility. Now, the reason why I say that is because I think this is really important for us. Okay? If we are to be people of integrity, then sometimes that means admitting liability. I was talking to a Christian guy a while back, and I said to him, we were talking about some situation. I said, write them an email and just say you're sorry that we messed up on this, and can we do this instead? And he said, no, I never say sorry. That's admitting that we've made a mistake. And I said, well, humanly speaking, the gospel starts with failure. You know, humanly speaking. So it's okay in God's sight to admit that you made a mistake because He knows it.
Hmm.
And therefore don't be afraid of anybody else's judgment, because God already knows that you've screwed up. Yeah? If we're Anna, then actually what we really need to do in this situation is we need to rush in and see the boss and say, look, I'm really sorry, this was my mistake. I could have done more last night to make sure that Tim got the message, and I didn't. But it's me. And then it's up to the boss to work out what to do. Yeah.
That happened to me last year. That's why I got kicked out of the job.
Really?
Because I took accountability instead of like letting it go.
Did you?
Yeah. The previous work I had. So January 4 after New Year, I got kicked out of the
Did you?
job.
Wow.
But the blessing there was that the next day, the Lord gave me a new job.
Yeah. Great.
As in, automatically, I just got one interview and then got offered the job the next day.
Amazing. Amazing.
That's number what's your
But my answer is number 16. That's the reason why. That's the reason why I told even if you have to choose to do and fix something about it, the output for the next action was still the same. You have no choice because it has to come up with a point we're in.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Okay. Are we stopping for lunch at 12:15, Christy?
12.
12:15?
Yeah.
That's what Donna said. Or can I carry on for a little bit longer? Because we're all feeling okay, aren't we?
yes.
So over the page, on page 18, I've got this little thing about how we make choices. Okay? And so very broadly, the way that human beings make choices fall into two big categories: deontological and teleological. Okay? Deontological means we follow rules. Okay? So a rule says, what's buzzing? There's something buzzing. It's not me.
There.
No, there was something on the table.
No, somebody's
It's probably one of Donna's many phones. She's like the one. Okay, so deontological is the idea that we follow rules and that the rules are always right, and they tell us do this, don't do this, and we do this or we don't do this. Okay. Teleological means that we're more influenced by the outcome. Yep, the purpose. And I've given some examples of different teleological ethical frameworks: situational ethics, utilitarianism, ethical egoism. Okay, I'll tell you what those mean in a second. Um, uh, beyond those, I've written down cultural norms and character virtue
Hmm.
ethics, which are two other ideas which may be somewhere between deontological and teleological. Okay, I'm using long words. I'll try and tell you a story. Okay? This is fiction, okay, and I'm going to make it up on the spot, all right? So I may or may not get this right. Okay. One day I'm driving along, okay? I'm driving along, and I'm on a road where the legal speed limit is 60 miles per hour, okay? It's a road that goes up and over the hills from where I live to the little town just beyond the hills. 60 miles an hour, that is how many kilometers per hour? About 110. 110 kilometers per hour. Something like that.
Going up, you can't go that.
I can go that fast?
You can't go that fast going up.
I can. I can.
Okay.
It's
His car is
yeah, I can.
Okay.
racing.
I can do that. And then at the top it's flat and then it's down. Okay, so I'm driving along 60 miles an hour. That's the speed limit. Okay, yeah. And then about 100k. 100 kilometers an hour. Yeah.
That's really fast.
Yeah.
Going up. That's why I was thinking you can't do that.
Divide by 5 and multiply by 8.
Times 1.6.
Yeah.
He's the driver.
Okay. Order. Folks, the important
I'm
thing
thinking physics too.
The important thing is not how many kilometers per hour I'm doing. The important thing
He's
is
creating the story.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm driving along. It's quite a fast road, and as I'm driving along, I noticed in front of me there's another car, and something happens to this car. Suddenly it swerves on the road. It's driving the same speed as me, and it goes off into a field over there, and hits a tree. All right. This is bad news. Okay, so I stop my car, and
No, I'm not raising my hand. I'm just like, imagining.
you're thinking about the hill. Don't think about the hill. Okay. I'm thinking about the tree. Don't worry about the details. Okay. So then I've stopped my car. Okay, and I'm running across the field because this car is over there and it's hit a tree, and I get there and I find, the driver of this car sitting behind the steering wheel, having smashed their head like that, and there's blood coming down here. The airbag has exploded and now it's deflated, and I'm feeling a bit nervous and a bit panicked. And I get out my mobile phone, and I have no signal.
Oh.
Okay? All right, so I've got my mobile phone, and there's no signal. And I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? I know I need to get this person some help. Because I can't do it all by myself. I'm not a paramedic. I know about the value of paracetamol, so this looks more serious than that. So I get the person out of the car. I know there's stuff about not moving people if they've got a back injury, but this person, they seem to be able to move, but there's still blood coming out here. So I think, okay, right, fine, get to my car. I put them in my car, and I'm driving down the road. And then I drive down to the bottom of the hill, and I'm into this little town, and I know there's no doctors in this town. I know there's no hospital in this town. I know that actually the place I've got to get to is 30 kilometers away. Okay? And I'm driving along. I also know that it's the law that I cannot use my mobile phone while I'm driving.
Yeah.
Okay? That's law number 1. And law number 2 is here's a place where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour. That's 30k. All right? And that's the speed limit. That's the law. Okay? And I turn and look at the person, because I'm driving a British car, so my steering wheel is on the right, and I turn and look at the person, which reminds me about a really funny joke I have to tell you, about a Russian. I'm driving along, and I look at the person, I can see blood, and I'm thinking, oh, grief. And they're looking, their skin has gone yellow, or grey, and they're going, whoa, like this, oh, good grief. Oh, I don't know what to do, 20 miles per hour, 30k. I've got 30 kilometers to go to get to the hospital. I can't use my phone because the law says I can't use my phone. Okay? Deontological ethics. I obey the laws. Okay? That's what you do. And if anyone asks me, I am obeying the law. In the meantime, the person over here, they've actually just lost consciousness. They've gone from being grey to being white,
No more blood.
apart from the blood all over their clothes. And I think, oh, what do I do? What do I do? I pray about it. Lord, what do I do? And I carry on driving at 30k and not using my phone. That's deontological. Everything is about the rules.
Hmm.
The rules are there for a purpose. I know why the rules are there. Because I've seen some idiot driving along using his mobile phone, smash. And I think I'm not going to be that idiot. I'm not going to danger the life of a child by driving stupidly. I know why there's a speed limit.
Hmm.
You know, because actually, when I go round the corner, I go into this road and it's a high street and there are lots of cars parked by the side and someone's going to pull out. Every day there's an accident on this high street. So I'm not going to drive fast. I know why the rules are there. And about an hour later I arrive at the hospital and they say you need to go to the morgue. If you're carrying a dead person in the car, send them to the morgue. Deontological. They're good rules.
What's the limit of the driving up
Oh.
there?
30 kilometers. Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't obey the law at the
No.
beginning?
At the beginning, the law was 60. It was 60 miles an hour, so 100 kilometers per hour. I was obeying the law. I'm always obeying the law. Okay?
Without
Yep. I'm always obeying the law. Did I do the right thing?
No.
You're not able to save the person. So
No.
Deontologically, yes.
Yeah, deontological, yes.
yeah, if you cannot go with the rules, you did follow.
It's a
But
great
the
question,
outcome-
isn't it? Isn't it such a
It was
good question?
Here in the Philippines, when we have emergencies, you turn on your hazard.
Hazard, and then
Yeah,
Yeah.
blow
So-
your
you
horn
go beyond the
fast.
speed limit.
Yeah. So did I do the right thing? Well, yes, I did. And no, I didn't. I did the right thing by the law. I did the wrong thing by my passenger.
Yeah.
Okay? So then I have to move into the framework of teleological ethics. Okay? Which is determined where goodness is determined not by the rules, but goodness is determined by the outcome.
It's the outcome.
Yep. Purpose. Telos. It's a Greek word. Telos. Okay. Now, obviously, the outcome that is best in this scenario is that my passenger should be alive. Yes. Otherwise, me getting mud on my trainers was a complete waste of time. No. Sorry. But you know, the whole point of stopping is to try and help someone. So then, if I'm putting in my teleological framework, what I'm thinking is, I need help. But I don't want to stop to use my mobile phone. So I look around and I make sure that there are no kids in the street. And I quickly get my mobile phone and I try to telephone the emergency services. Yep?
Hmm.
And the emergency services say, are you driving? And I say, yes, I am, but it's an emergency. And they say, well, you need to put your phone down or stop the car. I say, shut up, I've got someone dying next to me. What am I meant to do about it? And they tell me what I'm meant to do about it. And then they arrest me. Potentially. Okay? All right, I could put my phone there. Yep, I could put my phone there. Yeah, that's true. Put my phone in front of me on the dashboard. And I'm listening and I'm saying, yes, what is that you're saying? And I drive into an old lady by mistake. But it's okay because she lives. It's only a flesh wound. So I drive into the old lady, she bounces off and I can see her in the corner there and she's just fine. I mean, she likes it there. You know, she's happy. And then I think, well, I really need to get this person because they're looking very, very bad. So I put my foot down. And as you know, I've got a powerful car. And it can go up the hill very fast. So I accelerate, and there are all these parked cars down the side of the road, and I'm doing the Philippine thing, driving as fast as I can. Okay? And then somebody reverses out in front of me, expecting me to go at 30 kilometers, and I swerve to avoid them, okay? And I
Now you're
crash
both.
my car into the side of another car over there. I've got an old granny down there on the ground, down the bottom of the street. And now I've just swerved into this car. But okay, my car is all right. I just do a little bit of damage to the car there. Just scrape down the side. But my passenger is still alive. And I race as fast as I can. And I get all the way to Oxford, which is where the hospital is. And I arrive there, whew, you know, sweating and out of breath. And I say, oh, look, you've got to help me. You've got to help me. This person is dying. And they were in a traffic accident. Did you phone the emergency services? Yes, I did, but they're useless. Oh, sorry, you are the emergency services. I mean, they're not all useless. You're not useless, but they were useless. You know, can you help? And they take the person, put them onto a stretcher, rush them inside, save the person's life. Did I do what was right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the outcome.
Theologically.
You have to be willing to
Yeah, you're logical.
what's the reason for it.
I mean, I've smashed up somebody else's car and my own car, and I've left an old lady sitting on her bum on the side of the road with a big bruise and lots of filthy language coming out of her mouth, and maybe even more damage than that. But have I done the right thing?
Yes and no.
Yes and no is the only answer you can give in this scenario.
Yeah.
What does that show us?
Regardless of your choices.
Shows us that ethical choices are often not black and white.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ethical choices are often grey. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because we know there's a rule book over here, and we know what the rules say, but we also fear that if we obey the rules, then the outcome is going to be a real disaster. And we know that there is a great outcome, and we feel that it's within our power to achieve the great outcome if we ignore the rules. And that failing to do so would be failing to take responsibility, even if there are consequences for me, because I might have saved someone's life.
Hmm.
And what is the better thing to have done? Is it better for me to go home in the evening and say to my wife, you know, I had a cracking day today, I kept all the rules. And she says,
That
okay,
killed someone.
you know, what does that mean? Well, it means I kept all the rules. Tell me more detail about your day. Well, someone died in the car, but I cleaned up the blood, and I did keep all the rules. Or do I want to go home and say to my wife, oh, dear, I've had an awful day today. I'm afraid I'm probably going to be in prison for 6 months, and we might have to sell the house. And she said, and what have you done to the car? I said, oh yeah, I know, well, a bit of red inside, it's okay, and a bit of grey on the outside from that other car, well, we just have to live with it for now. She said, what on earth went wrong? And I said, well, I found myself helping someone in an emergency, and you know, and it was a disaster. But I think by God's grace, you know, they lived. You know, which is my wife going to be less horrified by?
Someone will.
Me keeping the rules, and someone dying in the car,
Or being able
or
to
me
save
breaking the rules and causing a whole lot of trouble and saving someone's life.
Joe's nice.
Joe's nice. She would be horrified. Okay, so this is really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Horrified because of
The bar,
liabilities.
the house.
She'd be horrified if I obeyed the rules because she knows I'm not very good at doing that. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. She has a good heart. But okay, so it's a fun little story, isn't it? And it's, you know,
Yeah.
think of your own scenario when you're talking about it, because it's a great thing to try and engage people on. And the point is that there is no absolutely right answer. You cannot categorically say that it's right to do this or right to do that. You can almost categorically say it would be wrong to obey the rules.
Horrified.
Sorry? Horrifying.
Here,
Yeah.
horrified.
Yeah.
She's from Armenia.
Yes.
This lady, horrified. Yeah, she's
No,
blind.
From Armenia.
No, she's from Iran.
From Azerbaijan.
Morocco.
Her name is Azra. But she's from Iran. Yeah.
She has a question.
No,
Yeah.
no, I just was reminded of the Heinz dilemma.
Of the
I don't know how to pronounce it. H-E-I-N-Z.
Heinz.
Heinz dilemma.
It's a dilemma. It's a moral, from the Kohlberg moral development theory.
yeah.
That the scenario is this. It's also fictional, but it also makes a question about ethical. What is ethical for you?
Mm.
So this man has a dying wife,
Mm.
and the cost of the medicine is really high because the pharmaceutical company who developed it made a lot of profit from it.
Yeah.
So the man who doesn't, of course, want to save the wife, break into the store and stole the medicine
Yeah.
to save the wife.
Yeah.
So the question is, is
Yeah.
it okay? That was the question in that dilemma.
Yeah.
What the man did to save a life. Or, yeah, but stealing is
Yeah.
also against the rule.
Yeah.
But then there's because the pharmaceutical is really greedy,
Yeah.
keeping the prices
High.
that it
Yeah. 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 I
cannot
know.
afford it.
Yeah. It's a
So
good
that's
scenario.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
It's like that.
Check down. Yeah. It's a good scenario. The you can see I've written down these three headings: situation, utilitarianism, and ethical egoism. Okay. These are three theories of teleological ethics. Okay. How we make choices. And I just wanted to give these as little examples because the problem we have in going down a teleological route is that one person's decision about goodness may be different to another person's decision about goodness.
Mm.
Okay? If you say that the rules are for dummies, then who determines what is absolutely right or wrong?
Yeah.
Okay? So situational ethics is, this came from a 1960s liberal Christian theologian who says that the primary consideration in any scenario is love. So Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that should be our guiding principle in all ethical situations.
Lecture.
Yeah, yeah. So, and of course, on paper that sounds absolutely fine, doesn't it? On paper that sounds like a really good scenario. Love is defining. Then we have complex scenarios in which people can claim that their judgment is driven by love. But their judgment may be completely different to what we understand as a broader sense of biblical ethics. So this is exactly what's happening in the dominant culture war at the moment about gender.
Mm.
Yeah. Or actually, if you go beyond gender to transgender, which is far, far, far harder for us to understand. Okay. So you've got a child who decides that they think they've been born in the wrong body. They've been born as a woman when really they feel they're more of a man because they like to play football, they like to climb trees, they like to listen to hard rock, whatever. They have a crush on somebody and they think they've been born in the wrong body. And on one level, in an entirely godless world, love says, let that person do what is best for them. Yep. And so we create a framework in which a person can, first of all, practice living as someone of the opposite gender, and secondly, if they find that that's satisfactory, they can go through a medical process to have their gender reassigned. Okay? All driven, or all argued for, on the basis this is loving. Yeah? Or in the area of same-sex relationships. I have a good friend who decided at the age of 58 that he was probably gay. And had been gay all his life. And he's been single. Because he could never find a woman who found him attractive. That's my line. Sorry. But he's decided he's gay. He's a Christian, and he's decided that he's lonely, and he would like to have a fulfilling relationship. And for him, right now, a fulfilling relationship means a relationship with a man. Okay? Now, situational ethics would say, well, that's all right. We judge every scenario by looking at the outcome as it relates to love and what is most loving. And it's obviously loving that this friend should not be lonely. Okay? That's the first step. And if our Christian community is unable to provide him with an adequate sense of belonging, but he doesn't feel lonely, then it's okay that he finds love where he wants to find love. Yep. And the world is telling us, of course, that's exactly right. And then we open up some little part of our Bible which says that actually, people pursuing same-sex relationships are reflecting nothing except sinful desire. And what do we do with that? So we've got a very strong emotional, teleological argument, which is standing up against our deontological, laws-based argument in Scripture. What do we do with that? We're in conflict. That's situational ethics, driven by love. Utilitarianism is another very famous version of teleological ethics. So utilitarianism says that we make a decision according to that which achieves the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Okay? We live in a strange world right now where actually there's a backlash against utilitarianism, where people from minority groups say what was good for the majority wasn't good for us. Whether it's indigenous people or people from an ethnic minority within a wider society. We now have scenarios often playing out where minority groups are able to speak with volume against a utilitarianism which has dominated society. And that's good. Because the problem with utilitarianism is it has no regard for diversity. As Christians, we're a group within a diverse culture. Indonesia, fascinating, isn't it? Indonesia, because it's got a history of being Buddhist and Hindu and Muslim and Christian, constitutionally, I'm told, the only thing that you cannot believe in is that there is no God. You have to believe in God. But your God can be from one of those religions. I find that really fascinating. In the West, we look at Indonesia and we know that it's the most populous Muslim world in the country. But actually there are more Christians in Indonesia, in a way protected by this form of religious secularism or pluralism. There are more Christians in Indonesia than there are, in Europe. That's interesting, isn't it? So utilitarianism and the idea of imposing rules which favour a majority is problematic. You also have the question of who actually makes the decisions about what is best for the majority. Utilitarianism, leaves little space for diversity. Then the next one on my list is what's called ethical egoism. And ethical egoism is a variety of utilitarianism applied to a group of one. It is what is best for me. Yep. So we know this because we understand the nature of sin. This is just a framework. But it is derived from this. I judge what is good in a situation by what is best for me, regardless of the consequences for others. That's ethical egoism. And it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But certainly in the West, this is the absolute dominant ethical framework. Okay? what happens with ethical egoists is that they try to shape society by finding other like-minded people. And so they develop consensus or a voice in society through collaborating with others. Okay? But it's driven by what's best for the individual. So again, the entire LGBTQ driving force is not a form of utilitarianism. It's not saying this is best for the majority, but it is a collection of people saying this is best for me, and my friends agree.
Hmm.
And in secular humanism, this is how morality is defined by consensus. And consensus is believed if it has a loud voice, even if it's still representing a minority group in society. You understand that? 20th century Western politics has been shaped by this all the way through. So Nazism in Germany was not representative of the majority of people in Germany, but enough people motivated by the same ideology made enough noise to say this is a viable representation to our society, that they were able to carry themselves into power. And, Adolf Hitler was elected democratically, carried themselves into power, and then forced their agenda through in society. And what happened in 1933 with Adolf Hitler is not unique in world politics. The form of consensus or establishing a consensus by a group of like-minded people dominated by self-interest, then able to present to society that it's in society's best interest, is happening later this month in a country the other side of the Pacific. Yeah? So ethical egoism is dangerous, particularly because the grouping of ethical egoists has created a very, very dominating cultural force in our time. Just before we stop for lunch, cultural norms, this is where we make a decision based on what we think is expected of us. Okay? So in the business that I used to work in, which was negotiating large contracts on commercial property investments, office buildings, in downtown Manila or shopping centres or shopping malls, I was buying and selling those as investments, and the cultural norm was to lie. I'm sure I've told you this before, but I did a little interview with 15 young Christians in my profession, and question one, is it ever right for Christians to lie? 100% said no. Question two, do we need to lie to succeed in business? And 12 out of 15 said yes. Okay? So in their hearts they know that dishonesty is wrong. In their pragmatism, they believe that dishonesty is necessary. Again, take that back to the bribes issue. In our hearts, we might know that paying a bribe is wrong. In our pragmatism, we might think that it expedites the situation and gets a better outcome quickly. Yep?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's a cultural norm. Okay. And sometimes we just give in to those because we haven't taken time to think them through. We haven't thought, if I do this, actually there are unseen consequences, both in my life and other people. Because when I've taken the step to tell a lie, my boss then knows that I'm willing to do that and to compromise. So my boss will expect that in the future. When I know that I've paid a bribe, the tax office knows that I'm willing to do that, and they expect me to do that in the future. Yeah? And then the final one I've got here is character, virtue, ethics. And again, this could be seen as a form of teleological ethics, but character, virtue, ethics, this was thought up by a guy called Aristotle. And Aristotle said, the way to determine if a person has lived a good life is to write their obituary when they're dead. And see what you say about them. So, when Prince has died in 30 years' time, and we write his obituary, and we say things about him, those things, because we like to say good things about the dead, those things will be a description of what we think is ethically good. Okay? So in the time that Aristotle was writing, it was very good for a man to show courage in battle, never to show weakness. And so an obituary of someone who we love would say that they were strong, they were independent, they were fierce, they were a fighter, they killed all their enemies, and would be saying, hooray! And these are all good values in that society.
Hmm.
In the world that Jesus talks about, we want to say of Prince, Prince was a man who loved God with all his heart and his mind and his soul and his strength. Prince loved his neighbour as much as he loved himself and lived in sacrificial service. And those would be our ethical goods.
Hmm.
And we'd be saying, hooray! What a great person. I was honoured to walk in his shadow once upon a time. Do you understand that? So, yeah. Character, virtue, ethics, a society determines what is good character and what is bad character. Okay? And this is an interesting one for us as Christians. Because as Christians, we are capable of making judgments about what is good character and what is bad character. And my suggestion, my hypothesis, is that we need to do a little bit more work on this to explore character and see character as something which can help us navigate between teleological and deontological. Okay? Between outcomes or rules.
Hmm.
And when Jesus teaches, for example, in the Sermon on the Mount, he never dismisses the rules, but he says you should always exceed them. And actually, if you look at the Sermon on the Mount is, first and foremost, about character. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. What Jesus is talking about is godly character. And this is like hitting gold for us as Christians. To realize that actually we can together open up Scripture and understand what Christ-like character should look like in our lives. And then how that helps us to know how to make these judgments as we navigate through ethical choices. Is that okay? Any questions? Anybody still alive?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've driven quite fast to try and keep you all alive. No? You okay? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We need to be deontological and follow the rules.
I totally agree.
And also theological, because people are hungry.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So we're
Considering.
yeah.
We need to apply it now.
Yeah. So folks, I hope that's engaging and interesting.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
This is just a framework for us understanding reality. And now we're going to start building our own biblical framework to think a bit more about that. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you and fill up your tummies. Amen.